Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be doing a bit of a crude digital whiteboard-style investigation into an engineering disaster of, well, absolutely epic proportions. We're looking at literally the deadliest structural collapse in human history, the catastrophic failure of the Bangchao Dam. It's this wild story of incredible hubris, the raw, unstoppable power of nature, and, maybe most surprisingly, a concerted effort to keep the whole truth buried for decades.
So, you might be wondering, how exactly does an event of this magnitude just vanish from the public record? I mean, to really understand this, we've got to set the scene. Picture this. The year is 1975, and we're in Henan Province, China. We are talking about a tragedy on an unfathomable scale, one that claimed well over 100,000 lives and literally reshaped the entire landscape. And yet, it was kept completely hidden from the public eye for an entire generation. No way, right? Well, to figure out how they pulled that off, we have to rewind and look at how this dam was built in the first place.
The story really kicks off with the immense, almost blinding engineering pride of that era. Built back in the early 1950s on the Rouge River, with the help of Soviet consultants, by the way, the Bangchao Dam was this massive clay core structure. It was part of this huge state-driven project to control flooding and generate power in the Huai River Basin. After getting some early reinforcements, people actually started calling it the Iron Dam. It was considered this absolutely unbreakable bulwark. In fact, hydrologists at the time were so confident, they designed it to easily withstand what they called a once-in-a-thousand-years flood. But, as we'll see, the design was already heavily compromised behind the scenes.
So, the crucial point is that a fatal flaw was literally baked into the structure from day one. See, Chen Xing, who was one of China's absolute top hydrologists, recognized the extreme flood risks in this specific region. He strongly recommended building 12 sluice gates, to safely manage the massive flow of water if a huge storm hit. But under intense political pressure for rapid industrialization, and honestly a desire to cut costs and save on steel, his expert modeling was completely overruled. They only built just five sluice gates. They basically prioritized holding water for economic output over the safety valve of flood discharge capacity. And that right there, that perfectly set the stage for a cascading failure.
Now, the ultimate test of that compromised design arrived in August of 1975, and its name was Super Typhoon Nina. After making landfall, this massive storm encountered a total freak meteorological event. It unexpectedly slammed right into a cold front. And what that did was create a stationary weather system. It basically stalled, just parked itself, right over the Huai River Basin. It acted like a giant relentless funnel, dumping just unimaginable amounts of water directly into the Bangchao Reservoir.
1,631. That is the number of millimeters of rain that fell in just a few days. To put that staggering figure into perspective for you, that is actually more than the region's entire annual average precipitation. And it all came down in a matter of hours. The reservoir was taking on water at a completely unprecedented, terrifying rate. It absolutely obliterated that once-in-a-thousand-years design metric the dam was supposedly built upon. The sequence of events leading up to the actual breach is, well, it's just agonizing to look back on. On August 5th, the heavy storm begins. By August 6th, local authorities are panicking. They desperately request permission to open the dam to relieve the pressure, but they get rejected because downstream areas are already flooding. Then we hit August 7th. The situation is critical, but communication lines completely collapse under the extreme weather. Telegrams are failing left and right. The Army unit stationed at the dam even fire signal flares into the sky, but they are tragically misunderstood. Finally, at 1 a.m. on August 8th, the water crests the dam wall. With those 5 measly sluice gates partially clogged by sediment, the structure simply cannot hold. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer physical reality of the Bangchao Dam failure by overtopping. Overtopping means the water didn't just push through the wall, it rose completely over its highest possible point. The water actually reached an elevation of 117.94 meters, directly breaching the protective wave wall. You're looking at massive, gouged-out earth where the Iron Dam used to be. This wasn't some slow, gradual leak. No, this was a sudden, incredibly violent disintegration of the entire earthen embankment. But the nightmare absolutely didn't stop at Bangchao. 62. That is the shocking metric of the cascading domino effect that followed. When Bangchao and the nearby Shimantan Dam collapsed, they triggered this sudden, monstrous wall of water that just roared downstream. It obliterated 62 smaller dams in a terrifying chain reaction. The entire basin's flood control system was effectively wiped out in just a few hours. The sheer kinetic energy of this event is, honestly, almost impossible to wrap your head around.
15.7 billion tons of water were released in total. This massive volume created an apocalyptic wave. We're talking nearly 10 kilometers wide, surging across the plains at 50 kilometers per hour. It was literally an unstoppable force of nature, flattening absolutely everything in its path and drastically altering the region's geography in the blink of an eye.
Behind all these staggering statistics, though, is a deeply horrifying human reality. A survivor recalled the exact moment of the breach, saying, "The blare of the dam burst sounded like the sky was collapsing. Houses and trees disappeared all in an instant. Entire communes like Daowenchang were wiped off the map immediately, taking all 9,600 of their citizens with them. It was a submerged catastrophe of truly unfathomable proportions."
When we actually break down the fatalities from the disaster, the numbers are just devastating. An estimated 26,000 people drowned immediately in those massive floodwaters, but the tragedy compounded severely in the weeks and months that followed. 145,000 more lives were lost to subsequent famine and epidemic diseases, simply because the infrastructure, railways, and agriculture were entirely decimated. That brings the tragic death toll to an estimated 171,000 people.
And the sheer geographical scale of the devastation is just as hard to comprehend. We are looking at 10,000 square kilometers of Zhumadanian prefecture utterly destroyed. Millions of people were left entirely homeless. Yet despite the vastness of this destruction, despite it looking like an inland sea, the scale of this disaster was meticulously and very effectively scrubbed from both domestic and international media outlets. And here's the kicker. For 3 decades, this massive catastrophe remained almost entirely hidden from the world. The true causal factors, the engineering missteps, and that massive loss of life were all locked tightly behind an iron curtain of political silence. The Bangqiao Dam failure remained a highly protected state secret. In fact, it wasn't until 2005 that the official death tolls and disaster details were finally declassified, bringing this hidden history into the light.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the broader legacy of the disaster. Because from the rubble, some absolutely crucial lessons were literally forced upon the engineering world. The catastrophe prompted immediate, nationwide reservoir security reviews. There was a critical shift in hydrology philosophy, finally prioritizing robust flood discharge capacity over just blindly holding water. And importantly, Chen Jing, the hydrologist who originally tried to warn everyone about the lack of sluice gates, was politically rehabilitated. His strict, data-driven probabilistic flood modeling actually became the standard for future projects.
You can really see the shift when we compare the hubris of the original 1952 structure with the rebuilt dam that was eventually completed in 1993. The original had a much lower design standard and a 492 million cubic meter capacity. The reconstructed dam, well, it not only increased holding capacity to 675 million cubic meters, but crucially, and this is the big one, it featured a massive maximum discharge rate of 15,000 cubic meters per second. This proves exactly why excess capacity and proper safety valves are what truly save lives. Which leaves us with a pretty vital question for today. With shifting global weather patterns bringing increasingly unprecedented storms and wildly anomalous rainfall, are the thousands of aging mid-century dams scattered across the world truly prepared to hold the line? The hidden history of the Bangqiao Dam teaches us that ignoring the data and engineering without adequate safety margins isn't just a mistake. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the structures around you, and I'll see you next time.